This one is for gender equality, one of our beautiful projects which we started well over 2 years ago. The title of this seminar is Gender Equality into the Future, Gender Equality Matters Approach. In this next 1.5 hours, we have 5 speakers for you, a short panel discussion, which I hope can be very interactive with the people that are present, as well as a short quiz, where we can also chat a bit about what we feel about gender equality. The theme of this seminar is the inclusion of gender equality programs in education. This has been a topic for quite a while, of course, and ESHA has partnered with various partners in Dublin, Greece, FMD in Italy, and the University of Murcia to bring this project to its fruition. And in this seminar, we would like to highlight the project outcomes of the program, which finishes end of March. And we will try and focus on the multimedia resources, the classroom materials that have been basically made for the primary and secondary education, as well as the training manuals for teachers, parents, and trainers. Before I give a short presentation about what the project is all about, maybe Luca can explain a bit about the technical side of this of the seminar.
Okay, so welcome everyone. We are going to record this meeting, and after the meeting has ended, in a day or two, we are going to upload the recording to our YouTube channel, so it will be accessible for all of you, and you will be able to share it with your colleagues. And we will invite you to register to our next webinars as well. This is part of a series of leadership webinars organized by the European Schoolheads Association. So once you will visit our YouTube channel, you will be able to see our previous webinars as well. We would like to ask all the participants to stay muted. And if you have any comments or questions, you will be able to ask them in the chat, and we will make sure that you get your replies. After the meeting has ended, I'm also going to send out all the participants the presentations of the presenters, so you will have all the materials that has been presented during the webinar. Thank you.
Okay, let me close a few screens. I will start my presentation. It's a short introduction basically to the project. And then after that, I will pass the time on to various speakers. So here we go. And just a moment, share the screen. I hope that everybody can see this. Well, welcome to this seminar. Basically, the premise and the goal of the GEM project is the following. We received funding from the Rights, Equality and Citizen program of the European Union in 2018. The project started in September. It should have actually finished last September, but we received an extension from the European Union for another 6 months. So now officially it ends, I believe, on the 9th of March. The main aim of this project is to tackle gender-based violence through a gender equality lens. And the key themes that I explored are training related to gender stereotyping, gender-based bullying, and gender-based violence. And these issues apply to all individuals, but we know that there are groups who are more vulnerable to experiencing these issues, such as women and men subjected to violent situations inside or outside the home, and people in the LGBTI community. As you probably all know, we who are GEM? Who are the organizations behind it? The lead of this project is the Dublin City University, and in particular their National Anti-Bullying Research and Resource Center organization called KMOP, the Social Action Innovation Center from Greece. Fondazione Mondo, Digitale. I am not sure if my Italian is that good, but that's our Italian partner. They are in Rome. University of Murcia, and in particular their group of research in educational technology. Maria will represent them in a bit with a nice presentation. And then there is, of course, the European School Heads Association, and Luca and I are basically involved in the major part of this program. A short thing about the deliverables. They will be uploaded shortly, but they're not all ready yet. But deliverables that we will give are classroom materials for primary and post-primary schools, training modules for teachers, parents, and train the trainers. There's also a big, massive open online course, a MOOC, which is already available on our website. And we have organized close to 20 GEM events. This is even a 19th event. And this, of course, excluding all the training sessions by all our partners. As said, the materials are available with partners in English, Greek, Italian, Spanish, and Dutch, and on our website, which is genderequalitymatters.eu under the caption Toolkit. For now, I would say that this concludes my part of the presentations. Euan, I'll leave it over to you. And now I have to stop sharing, of course.
Euan, then I will share your presentation, and please let me know when you will want me to go further on the slides. Once Edwin has stopped, I'll go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just
Hello, everybody. Hope you can hear me. I'm now unmuted. I'm Euan Mackie, and I'm speaking to you from the north of Scotland, where the sun is coming out after a grey, rainy day. Anyway, nice, and thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm a former head teacher, educational coach, been always interested in education and the personal development of young people. And Edwin asked me if I could do a little presentation on the gender perspective, which I think is very important. So I'm interested in this, I'm curious in this. So I am very much interested in what other people have done, because I'm always learning, and I think it's an area which we need to learn. Just pass on to the next slide. I've got a couple of slides just to cover some of the. The first one is really one about, from a reflective view, about thinking about young people and their well-being. From Euan Mackie, who is a well-known psychotherapist and author. And he relates how mental health and well-being are strongly related to positive personal interactions, starting, of course, with friends and peer groups, and how this is essential for young people to feel good about themselves. This is from a Diana Whitmore, who's done a lot of work with social psychology with disaffected young people who've been excluded from schools and who have had their teachers have felt concern about them. And she has engaged them with volunteering opportunities, which is a marked, give them a marked sense of value. So she really believes that all young people need to feel valued and have meaning in their lives. They long to have meaning and purpose. The third quote I'm taking recently from research by London Assembly is related to gender. And that is that those young people who have gender issues, whatever that may be, seem to have stronger feelings of isolation and are more prone to mental health issues. Okay, the last slide. So from an educator's point of view and thinking how to respond to young people, we use the term inclusion a lot. And I would highlight that inclusion to me is how young people feel included and not necessarily how they're integrated. And also to be aware of cultural perceptions of gender. These are essential in this. But I have 3 E's: entitlement, education. In terms of entitlement, I think equality of opportunity is key. And I think this is the whole raison d'etre behind the project is gender equality. I put it as equal opportunity and respect for equal genders. But importantly, aside with that is individual uniqueness and value. And I think that's a complementary aspect to think that we are certainly not all the same. And to put ourselves into gender boxes is in some ways limiting the sense that each of us have got unique characteristics. From an educational point of view, and I've had a look at some of the materials, and I think it's great to have such a range of them. I would highlight three kind of aspects which I'm curious about. The first one I could spend probably the whole afternoon in wondering about is the diversity that we have in physiological and emotional characteristics. We are not limited in some ways. These arise from genes, dispositions, environment, and they produce a lot of diversity in the notion of who we think we are. I think that follows on to what is a theme throughout some of the materials is the media gender stereotyping, and I think everyone will be aware of that, and what's so-called norms. And norms seem to be so important for young people to grasp onto something that this is they want to be normal and accepted as such. I am interested in these terms masculine and feminine and what they actually mean. I suspect in some cases, we all will have different viewpoints of what they are, and that in a sense is a good activity. Perhaps the terms willful and caring are also kind of interesting. I come to a sort of conclusion that these are kind of subjective characteristics that we hang on to. And that all of us have elements of all of these, some more to the forefront than others. And it's quite a useful educational concept to contain us not in particular gender boxes, but to see that we have a range of characteristics. Finally, I think is that while educational programs are useful, there is a need for experiential learning in this, as in many other fields of personal development. And the experience that young people have will be strongly related to the gender influence roles around them, what they see around them, and what they live with within their families and within their institutions. So as educators, we have to be always being aware of this experience and looking for opportunities to widen horizons by people offering roles which are perhaps not totally gender orientated, but of a different nature. And finally, through this experiential approaches, which I think are really valuable, are those ones which young people can feel that their individual characteristics are being seen and shared and valued. I think that's probably enough from me, but I'm very interested in what other people have to say. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure, thank you very much, Ian. I'm sure that during the panel discussion later, we can hear a bit more about your views. Next up is in our line of presentations is Maria Jesús Rodríguez Entrena. I will call you Maria, a bit easier. Maria is the professor of the Department of Didactics and School Organization at the University of Murcia. And she will basically talk about the program that was run in Spain, and she will talk about gender equality in educational intervention in Spanish primary schools, the preliminary results of the GEM project. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Edwin. Hello, everybody. I don't know if you can allow me to share my screen to share with you the presentation, because I think I cannot do it now.
You can do it now. I just did.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for the presentation, Edwin, and hello to everybody. So in my presentation, I'm going to share with you a kind of general overview about the results, preliminary results, when we apply in the Spanish school the materials coming from the Gender Equality Matters project. So firstly, I would like to talk a little bit about the background and the target groups information. So at the first stage in the project, for us, it was quite difficult to find schools willing to collaborate or participate in the project. All of them said it's a very interesting topic, but they really don't feel prepared or ready to be involved in the project because of the gender is a very important issue for us, but sometimes families or teachers are not safe or secure enough to face this topic. So at the last stage, we could count on 10 primary schools. 3 of them are private schools and 1 is religious, and the rest of the schools are public schools. 4 more or less middle CES, and the other 1 low CES. So with these 10 schools, we have been applying the materials for more or less 3 months. And we evaluate the student with a pre-questionnaire at the beginning before we start applying the materials. So 199 students took part in the pre-test evaluation. So the teacher applied the materials, and after that, we evaluate them again, and 194 students answered to the second part of the evaluation. In terms of teachers, we count on 13 teachers participating, because in some of the schools, more than 1 class was involved in the project. So the preliminary results, before we talk about the results, we pick the 4 questions more important for the student. So some of them are linked with the understanding about the meaning of the different words we use in the project, like gender violence, bullying, LGBTI, so all these words we have been working in the project. The second question was about if they, before the project, they have been working in this topic as a lesson, or maybe as a part of 1 lesson, or maybe any kind of activity in the school. The third question was linked with the issues they would like to learn more in the future. And the last one was about their personal experience linked with the gender issues. So the student answers, the first thing is that all of them recognize that they increased their level of knowledge about bullying, LGBTI, and stereotypes. So they recognize as well that after applying the classroom materials, they notice an increase in the number of activities and the number of different lessons they receive regarding to these topics. And linked with the question about what do you would like to increase your knowledge in the future, in the first place, they say LGBTI. In the second place, equality, and finally, they say they would like to increase their knowledge about gender violence. When we ask them about the different treatment based on their gender, we offer to them an open question, and some of them write something like they experience sometimes in the playground, they experience differences because when the boys are playing football, sometimes the girl annoying them, or sometimes they mention things linked with the way to dress or the colors, like pink colors or something like that. So what's the student experiences linked with that? If we move into the teacher question, mainly we highlighted two different questions. The first one is, which kind of methodology did you choose to work the gender issues in your classes? And the second one, what will you need to feel safer and more competent in addressing and preventing gender stereotyping and gender-based violence in your schools? And they reply that all of them mainly use debates and role dynamics to work with these kind of topics. When they use the debates, try to create a common agreement between the students based on the information they have been working on. And they all of them recognize that they need more specific training to work with these issues at the schools. And finally, all of them recognize that the project for them means like a basic statement to carry on working these issues in the future. On the other hand, all of them as well say that they recommended the project to other teachers in other schools. And in terms of the materials and the training they receive, they say it's okay for the beginning, if it's enough for the starting point of view, but they recognize they need more extra training and maybe modify a little bit the materials to still working on this topic in the future. And some of them recognize a lack of confidence and a lack of training to feel confident enough to work with these issues in their classes. We asked about the best lesson. They apply 5 lessons in the classroom materials, and they recognize the ones about gender stereotypes is the best one for them, because normally they try to find very clear material for the student, where the student can easily see or recognize from the real experiences this kind of topic. They prefer to be practical and easy to see than theoretical lessons or maybe less precise materials. So when it's real and close to the context, it's easy for the student to understand the meaning and to make progress in this topic. If we move into implication and future challenges, the main findings are linked with they value the projects and they value the materials they have been applying in the classroom, and they value as well the first training they receive. But as I say before, they feel they need maybe extra training and modify a little bit the materials. They recognize the project as a first impulse, at a first stage in the process to carry on in the future with extra working and extra training. And all of them say that if we ask them about the impact in the student, they say they can notice the student feel comfortable to talk about these topics, but it's not enough to talk in terms of impact. They say it's something good to start, but if we would like to talk about the impact, a real impact, we need future intervention in a deeper way. And in terms of challenges, all of them recognize gender topic and stereotype, and all these things we have been facing with the projects are very important, but sometimes they try to feel our link with policy or something like that, and some of them avoid to work with this topic in the schools. So in the future, it will be good to understand that we need to talk about equality and gender stereotyping and gender violence and all these issues, regardless the political confrontation and all these aspects around these topics. And the other thing is about teachers. They need to feel more secure, more confident to work with these topics in their classroom. And sometimes training is an important issue to carry on working and going deeper. So mostly this is the first overview about our preliminary results, and later maybe we can talk a little bit more in the last session of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, for your information about the Spanish situation, if I may call it that. Next up is Margarita Gerouki. She's a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Political Sciences and the University of Jyväskylä. Difficult name again. Her presentation will be on education on gender and sexuality as a political battlefield. Sounds a bit ominous. The experience of implementing the GEM project in Greece. Margarita, you have the floor.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, everybody. I've put some 3,500 kilometers distance between me and the battlefield, because I'm now in University of Jyväskylä in Finland. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our experience of implementing the GEM project in Greece. But first of all, let me describe the framework, the legal framework and the educational framework. The Constitution of 1975 states that Greek men and women are equal before the law. They have the same equal rights and obligations. And we have laws concerning the family introduced during the 1980s, and these laws includes legislation about the civil marriage and the legalization of abortions. And regarding the prevention and treatment of domestic and gender-based violence, Greece has ratified in 2018 the Istanbul Convention. Therefore, in the recent decades, we have the Ministry of Education and many Greek universities designing, research and implementing educational programs, and many non-profit organizations like CMOP as well, to promote equality and gender issues. And many of these programs are co-financed by the European Union. Nevertheless, if we look at these programs, despite the lively interest of issues of gender at large, gender is approached mainly as male-female, emphasizing its biological, strictly dualistic and regulatory aspect. That is, programs that discuss gender in a biological spectrum, taking into account the experience of intersex people, for example, but also programs that deal with gender and gender expression, taking into account the experience of transgender people, for example, do not easily find a place in the Greek educational reality. And a characteristic example is the effort to introduce the topic of gender identity in the secondary education in 2016, which was met with a great resistance, mainly by the Orthodox Church. In the letter the Archbishop addressed to the Prime Minister, the Orthodox Church described teaching about gender identity as an effort to overturn the natural order and as an ultimate crime and a distortion. And if you are wondering why we are interested in that, actually this is all Greek to you, but it says Hellenic Republic, Ministry of Education and Religions. They are very connected. So now, the importance of projects like GEM. I don't need to talk a lot about it. There is huge data saying that there are vulnerable populations all over the world due to gender or sexual orientation. And during the COVID pandemic, even more so. So 1 out of 3 women globally have been victims of physical and or sexual abuse. 25% of Greek women state the same. We have 87,000 feminizations in 2017, and 50,000 of them were from people very close to the woman, like the partner or some member family. 137 women are killed daily. There are feminizations in Greece, and actually Greece holds the lower gender equality index, it's 51.2 for Greece, whereas the EU average is 67.4. So there is something we need to worry and address here. Now, regarding the LGBTQI population, we do know that Greece needs to be a little bit greener, to say so. We do face homophobic and transphobic bullying. We do have people who belong to the LGBTQI community commit suicide or being victims of murders. And the recent research about the school climate in Greece noted that in Greece, 84% of students hear the word gay in a negative connotation. 96% of them have heard negative comments for those students who do not conform to the stereotypical male behavior. 74% of students have heard transphobic comments at school. 1 out of 3 experience verbal abuse, and 65% of LGBTI students have never heard anything positive about LGBTI identity at school. So the main goal of the GEM project was to raise awareness and educate on issues related to gender equality and the fight against gender-based violence, with a special reference to violence against LGBTI people, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, intersex. And according to research, a child's or a young person's gender identity and or expression is a factor that influences the occurrence of bullying at school. And the students who belong in LGBTI community have difficulties to find schools where they feel safe enough. So let's talk about GEM in Greece. In Greece, the classroom implementation of GEM was initially approved by the Greek Ministry of Education in July 2019. And in the first submission of the program for the program approval, the approval concerned the materials, the classroom activity materials, and the needs assessment questionnaires. Although in the materials, the classroom materials for the primary school, there is no reference to issues of sexual diversity, in the needs assessment questionnaires for students, parents, and teachers, we read the introductory note. Ireland, Greece, Spain, and Italy are cooperating for this program. Its purpose is to help and at the same time educate teachers, parents, and children to prevent and intervene effectively in case of human rights violation and gender-based violence, including violence against members of the LGBTI community. Students, participants were asked if they knew the meaning of the abbreviation LGBTI, if they were pondering about LGBTI issues, and if they would like to discuss them at school. And however, issues of sexual orientation and gender identity were included in the teachers and parents training. Despite the initial approval, July 19, Greek teachers were unable to implement GEM in the beginning of school year 1920, and 2 main factors obstructed implementation: the change of government on July 19 and the announcement of new members for the board of directors of the IEF, the organization connected to the Ministry of Education, who are responsible for approving programs and educational materials. The new administration demanded for some programs, including GEM, to go through a resubmission and re-evaluation process. And this re-evaluation took so long, practically blocked the classroom implementation. And because the approval came just 2 weeks before the hard lockdown due to the COVID-19. Interestingly, the new approval, there were specific changes and modifications for the program. Namely, any reference to gender and sexual minorities has been deleted from the introductory note and from the question. So this trend of censorship and elimination of GPTI references for GEM, which was observed in Greece for some other programs as well, highlights a conservative attitude of the Greek Ministry of Education that does not align with the contemporary needs for inclusive, fair, awareness-based, human rights-based education as promoted by the EU. It is also a presumption of an indirect and subtle strategy of silencing relevant issues and avoiding taking political responsibility and ultimately social change. The political agenda in Greece may seem supportive of gender and sexuality diversity issues by projecting the desired humanitarian pro-European profile, for example, the recognition of the by law of the Greek identity, at the same time violate minority rights. So the reapproval of GEM and the elimination of any of these issues is an example of exercising political power, where the shift to human rights is used as a political mask, but at the same time, institutionally and effectively hindered. In recent years, work from many scientific fields argues that people who differ in sexual diversity and gender identity become victims of violence, social exclusion, marginalization, violence of their human rights. And this seems to originate to unfounded and scientifically outdated perceptions, which however still influence and shape attitudes in a large part of the society. When education does not have a chance to challenge such assumptions pedagogically, human rights are in danger. Schools, as one of the most important social structures, play an essential role in promoting relationships based in love, rights, social recognition, and acceptance. And it is possible for educational policies to become an agent for reshaping and adjusting social attitudes and perceptions. In order to address issues of violence and exclusion of persons belonging to sexual minorities, there must be an accepted basic framework for the protection of their rights. Schools cannot deal with homophobic bullying without the recognition of sexual diversity. And the problem of homophobic violence, and this cannot happen if issues of concerning LGBTI people are simply eliminated, as we have seen in GEM projects and the reapproval process in Greece. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margarita. Next up is Judit Horgas. She's been working with us on various projects. Judit is a teacher, trainer, editor, and translator, and has translated and edited over 230 books. She's the head of the nationwide Hungarian educational program, which is called Dragonfly, and they work with 54 schools in various places: Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, and Serbia. And she will now give a short presentation on the trauma-informed inclusion of Roma girls and the future memory program. Judit, we would like to hear from you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay. Can you see it? Yes, great. Okay, it's just, yeah, it's not the beginning. Okay, so this is the beginning. Just to let you know very shortly about us, we are a Hungarian foundation and we do a lot of things. And one of the things that we do is a nationwide educational program, as Edwin said, Now the interesting thing about this is that we do not only work in Hungary, but in the neighboring countries where there is still Hungarian-speaking schools. So that means Slovakia, Romania, Serbia at the present, and Romania, of course. We have a lot of schools in Romania. And this educational program is based on a children's magazine. It's a very colorful magazine that the schools get for free, and they use it as a kind of textbook. It includes a lot of wonderful pictures and fairy tales, contemporary literature, poems, and all kinds of various articles. This is what we use to help the schools use the kind of material that is very contemporary, very colorful, that children like to read, because of course, as everywhere in the world, we have problems with children not wanting to read. So we use this, and inside this rather big educational program, we have a small project that we call Future Memory. And this is what I'm going to talk about a bit more. But before that, it's just, so this is the Dragonfly educational program. And inclusion is very important. I tried to select the kind of pictures that will show you that we work with children between the age of 6 to 14. And we also work with schools where they teach mentally disabled children and with children with all kinds of disabilities. So the Future Memory program started in 2018 and it's still working, and we have 2 schools. These are small towns in Hungary, in rather socially disadvantaged areas of the Hungarian countryside. And these 2 schools mainly teach Roma students. So most of their students are Roma. Officially, there is no segregation in Hungary. Unofficially, unfortunately, there is. So the Future Memory program has the kind of social background that you need to understand in order to see how we work. What you need to know about Hungary is that there is a very strong and government-sanctioned racism against the Roma now, and it's very much institutionalized. So that means that, for example, the NGOs who work in the field are officially harassed in various ways. We as well. For example, we are officially on a blacklist, which means that sometimes we are not allowed to get state money and so on. So you can imagine that it can be a problem. It is also a problem that the Roma representatives, because the self-governments have Roma self-governments, most of them who take these posts tend to be corrupt. So it's very difficult to work with them as well. And this, of course, leads to a disproportionately high rate of unemployed Roma people in prison. And unfortunately, it also means that Roma children in psychiatric and social care have a disproportionate rate. Unfortunately, what we have to face is that Hungarian teachers tend to come from white middle-class people. So, for example, in these 2 schools where we work, where the students, like 90% of the students are Roma, I only know 1 teacher who is Roma. All the others are non-Romas. This, of course, leads to various cultural problems. During the COVID situation, what we know is that a disproportionately high number of Roma children were just simply left out. They just disappeared, dropped from the system. Nobody could reach them. And this, of course, is going to have a long-term problem in their education. This Future Memory program targets Roma girls. And the reason for this is that what we see is that Roma girls tend to drop out very early, a high number of them. They tend to get pregnant at the very early age, 14, 15, and they don't even finish the 8th class that is very often needed for various posts. So in order to get a job, very often this is what you need, and often they do not even finish that. So there is, just to explain the name Future Memory, there's a scientific background behind this program. So what neuroscience tells us is that the same areas of your brain is used when you remember something and when you forecast something. So basically remembering and telling the future uses the same brain structures. And what neuroscience tells us is also that if you imagine your future, if you make plans for if you dream about your future, that is almost as if it had happened. So this means that what we're trying to do during these sessions or work plans with our children, with our girls, is that we try to create future memories by talking about the kind of future they could have. Because very often, if we decide something, if we make any kind of decision, we base our decisions on our memories or on the memories of our parents or grandparents or the community that we live in. Now, unfortunately, the kind of memories these girls could have are not the right one because they lead to bad decisions. For example, early dropout and early pregnancy. So we need to create new memories for them, new future memories. And that's what we try to do. So the targets are these Roma girls who are between the age of 11 and 14, and they are, of course, socially disadvantaged in various ways. But we also find it very important to work with their families and their teachers and all the adults that surround them in their lives. So we try to invite the family members monthly to our sessions and their teachers. And for example, the social workers who work in them, decision makers who work with them. And we try to show them that creating a safe space for these girls can change their future. The workshops include weekly workshops for the girls. So these are done in these two schools by teachers who work there, and the monthly meetings for mixed groups. In these mixed groups, we work with the children and the adults together. And these include all kinds of experiential learning. We play together, we talk together. And this is very important because very often what we see is that this is the only occasion where parents feel safe inside the school building. Very often you can imagine that these parents usually went to the same school where the kids went. They did not like being there. They're very often humiliated. They are only called into the school if there is a problem with their kids. So basically they associate all the bad things with going into the school building. So what we try to change is that they come to the school building and we have something good there, something that they enjoy, that they can feel safe. And what is very important is that we try to show the teachers there that in order to be successful in their work, they have to respect these parents. Now, this is very difficult because as I said, these teachers are white, middle-class people, and the parents of these Roma children are very often uneducated, unemployed, and Romani. There are very strong cultural differences, and we have to work a lot to reach the kind of mutual respect that is mutually beneficial for everybody, but the girls really needed to feel safe. So in order to do that, we use the art of hosting methodology during these workshops. And we cooperate with the International Parents Association. So Eszter Salamon is here. She helps us with our parental engagement plans. And we also work with Postdoctoral Hungary Foundation because we found that most of the children that we work with have had some kind of trauma, and very often the parents and the family as well. So we learned how to create trauma-conscious work plans and sessions, taking into consideration the kind of traumas they might have had and very often did, and also teaching the teachers how to deal with traumatized people in general and in practice. The girls get a monthly scholarship. It's just a very small amount, and we give them at the end of the month if they completed each month. And this is important because this helps the family see that this is really beneficial. So it's just a tiny financial motivation, but it seems to work very well. And we hope that we will be able to find the money to continue to do that. It's not easy. And in the summer, we took the girls on trips, and we had a camp, and we were planning excursions. Unfortunately, due to the COVID situation, a lot of our plans had to be canceled. And I hope that we will be able to return to our plans at a later time. And I'm very much looking forward to your questions during the general session. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Judith. Next up is Marta Tonelli. She's a psychologist and trainer at FMD, Fondazione Mondo Digitale, and she prepared a presentation with her colleague Annaleda, who's worked on the project as well. And their presentation is going to be called Gender Equality in Italian Schools, an overview of GEM in Italy. Marta, we would like to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you, Edwin. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here on behalf of Annaleda and Fondazione Mondo Digitale to discuss the outcomes and the impact of GEM and the next step that will be taken. But let's start with an introduction to the context where GEM took place in Italy. Despite the national adopted policy against bullying and gender discrimination, started in Italy with the Istanbul Convention of 2013 and the Good Law School of 2015, and the varieties of good practice that have been settled in Italy consider the severity of the issues, the introduction of schools of gender education and gender expression still produce many disputes and controversy. So let me show you some background information and what the school's context were and what it displayed in Italy before GEM took place. We saw lots of confusion and not enough documentation, the need for training, for having shared good practices, the need for training for a correct use of terminology and more understanding, the need for more collaboration between schools and families, and the need to keep researching on bullying and gender-based violence and its connection with the school dropout, for example. So GEM represented a step towards a thoughtful meditation together and a brave action. But let me show you two examples that deserve to be mentioned in our experience of trainers. The first was an underestimation of the power of the adult's behavior, both parents and teacher, in reinforcing gender stereotypes. So there was a lack of awareness on the impact of the different interaction with boys and girls by the caregivers. For example, I was talking with a mother of a 3-year-old girl, and she was surprised when I pointed out that the preschool choice of wearing a pink apron for the girls and blue aprons for the boys might have effects on gender segregation and on the attitude of the teachers towards boys and girls and then their behaviors. And she said that she never thought about it. So we started to talk on gender equality and education and the actual gender gap, for example, on STEM subject choices for girls. So we can definitely say that the need of early prevention to be started in kindergarten is crucial. Another thing that GEM intercepted is a strong will to get support by the teacher from training and expert to reinforce self-efficacy in order to help their pupils, for example, while talking to them, not giving for granted their sexual education, their sexual orientation or gender identity. Again, I would like to show you another personal example in my experience of a trainer. A teacher felt very relieved when she called me, and she was talking to me on regard of one of her pupils that was texting her a message and asking her if it could be called Silvia instead of Marco in class. After the surprise, she trusted her self-efficacy of talking through this request with the kid, feeling supported and not alone, same feeling that had the pupil, and she could reply with empathy and taking seriously the gender dysphoria issue presenting, telling the pupil that she understood his need to talk it together and being available to do that. So she became a bridge with the family and the school and addressed the opportunity to talk with the counselor. Now let's have a look at these pie charts that are referring to the answer given by teacher before the GEM training. This pie chart highlights the need of prevention in school linked with an express unawareness of the issue. If we notice, the 41% of the teachers said that they were not sure of being trained of the subject. So we can definitely say that GEM had different outcomes and different implications in different schools, but it was a first step to enhance differences and overcome discrimination, giving a name to them. GEM also brought to attention the importance of the cultural environment and the school environment on the expression of gender identity. To adopt a gender perspective in teaching and education means to recognize and understand the sign of violence and discrimination. As we saw, there were some obstacles and issues to address. For example, teachers generally did not identify the issues. Sometimes they were saying, this is not happening in our school, our pupils are not interested, or they were ambivalent on regard of their knowledge of the correct terminology and information. They were also worried of not being enough support and afraid to be left alone with too much to handle in class. They were also afraid of being criticized and worried about negative comment and reaction from families and teachers. In fact, many parents at the beginning were not supportive and they refused to authorize the project. We can say that GEM started a process as it was making student and teacher protagonists of the action of training, and it triggered empathy as the stakeholders started to connect emotionally, sharing experiences by creating supportive spaces, both mentally and physically. So they can use sharing methodology and add more precise information. The teacher support also strengthened the feeling of belonging both in teacher and in students. Let's have a look at the target and how we reach the target. It was reached in two ways. The first one is a campaign to raise awareness through information material, webinar, massive open space courses for teachers, pupils, and their parents. And the second one through training for teachers and GEM activities in class for the students. One of the main goals that have reached by GEM was to confront different generations. So people of different age and generation talking together, student and teacher, and discuss instead of hiding this important aspect. Adults and teenagers were there to support each other. GEM pointed out the importance of prevention to overcome discrimination and made teachers and pupils and also us trainers to reflect on everyone's role toward this goal and on our daily practice and how it can have a real impact on the change. So,
and I'd send out that email. So what are we saying? Friday 12, is it?
Yeah.
And then if he gets back that that's okay, I can say.
sorry. So these are some slides that show the results based on the elaboration of the answer to the survey pre and post the project. As we can see from these slides, teachers felt more confident after receiving the training in discussing in class about gender stereotype. It's interesting to observe that the not sure share decreased considerably after having received precise information. This one is about the students and the student participation to the activity. After the participation, the student halved the negative reply in being able to discuss LGBTI issues in class, demonstrating the trust they had in the teacher, but also expressing the need for more deepening. The teacher said that understanding gender stereotype trigger their awareness on how to recognize how the stereotypes are expressed in school. And the teacher also developed pro-social behavior toward the victim defense. And it's interesting to observe the proportion of quite confident and very confident answer in the post, as it shows a raise of awareness after the train that is combined with the need to learn more to help best. Receiving a proper training on bullying and empathy also helps the teacher to become more confident and being more empathic with the student perpetrator of gender-based violence. Here follow some of the quotes from the teachers. One of the things that they said that they enjoyed most was spending time together with the colleague and the student as a moment to assess the situation around them. And they also valued, very important, the participation of the kids at the training. All the teachers said that they will continue using the resources, and in most schools it was very valued, the peer education as a very transformative methodology in equal training. Fondazione Mondo Digitale will embed GEM in other projects, for example, Coding Girl, which aims to accelerate the achievement of equal opportunities in the field of science and technology, involving US diplomatic mission, Embassy of Kingdom of Netherlands, São Paulo, Microsoft ENI, and a network of 32 academic partners in Italy to involve 15,000 secondary school students and their teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Next up is a panel discussion. I hope that this will be a lively session between the presenters of before, and we've included Eszter Salamon as well. She's a team member of us at ESHA and the director of Parents International, and I would say that she's the inclusion specialist in our organization. We've prepared a few nice talking points, I think. If anybody has something to say or you want to react, I think you can either just unmute yourself or send a message in the chat, and we will see if we can give an answer to your questions. So thank you all for being here for this panel discussion. I have a few questions for you. Maybe you could share your thoughts, Eszter. And I have two questions basically for you. In what ways has gender equality matters been relevant in your own context? And what is the most crucial inclusion moment in a student's or in a person's life you feel?
Oh, these are not easy questions. First of all, I would like to thank you for also including me in the panel. Well, any kind of gender equality initiative is very relevant, I think, when it comes to inclusive education, especially because it's a very hot topic that people are reading about. The media is covering it, and very often both teachers and families are a bit helpless, so they don't really know how to react on these things. And I think that if a child hears about such topics, then we also have to somehow react on it and help them to understand the complexity of the situation. When it comes to gender equality, I usually start with showing probably very popular example. I don't know how many of you know it. The BBC made a little experiment with people who think that they are not biased gender-wise. And the experiment was that they were asking people to look after an 18-month-old kid. They did two experiments. In one, they dressed up a little girl as a boy, and the other one, they dressed up a little boy as a girl. And they put the child on the same mat with the same assortment of different toys. And even though all the people thought that they are not biased gender-wise, when they thought that the child was a girl, they were offering the child soft toys, dolls. And when they thought that the child was a boy, they were offering the baby building blocks, cars, and, well, boy kind of toys. And very often, by the time children reach an age when they start attending formal education, there is already a kind of gender bias, and very often we don't tackle that. So I think that from an inclusion point of view, and especially when it comes to school leaders and teachers, what you have to be aware is that by the time you first meet the children, they have been surrounded by some kind of gender bias. And even in the most gender-wise inclusive families or local environments, there is a lot of absolutely not intentional gender bias. And I think this is something that needs to be tackled as a kind of first step when you enter formal education. Did I give you some kind of an answer, Edwin? You are muted.
Yes, I'm unmuted again. Yes, of course. I think this video is also part of the materials of the videos that we have provided on the website. So this suits us perfectly well. Ian, can I have your views on gender equality in your context?
Oh, I'm still finding that out with compatriots. I remember one colleague of mine who was the same age as myself, but remarked she was biologically female, good compatriot, but she remarked about her invisibility when she attended meetings. She was having a very high-powered role in our education authority. But because of her appearance, she wasn't looking the smart professional person, but just by her appearance, people presumed that she was of low status. And the invisibility of, you see, it's difficult for me to maybe describe, but women, you know, at different ages, you know, so gender plays a continuing theme around this all the time. And going back to, I think, if you like, early discussions about inclusion, it was a Roma person that said, a Roma teacher who said to me, speaking on behalf of the Roma community in Catalonia, and she said, our community does not want to be integrated, but we want to be included. And I think this is the key thing with gender as well, to be included for who you are, as opposed to presumptions being put on to you. And that throughout is a kind of thing about being included. The most crucial inclusion moment in student lives is to be included for their uniqueness, whatever their personality is. for other people to see them and for them to be able to appreciate that others are seeing them in their own characteristics, whatever that might be. And that might be strongly with a gender element. And the opposite, to be excluded, can often be devastating in terms of young people feeling, that they are not able to express themselves in life. I think that's the last question you asked.
Before I go to Margarita, Maria.
Yes. Okay, for the Spanish context, I think the project means things related to the previous teacher talking. It's like for the first time, sometimes they have a clearer space to create a debate, to openly talk about sexual diversity or violence in link with gender. So for the student, it's a new space to feel free to express themselves and to recognize sometimes things that normally are unaware for them, and you put visual things and they can recognize and identify problems that they already know, but they are not aware. So we are creating a space to make it visible, something that is there, but sometimes we try to avoid as a teacher. So the GEM project has been a good starting point for the schools, and some of the schools recognize that it's like a German to start working in the future, because now we have been working with some classes with children from 11 to 12 years old, but could be as a point of departure to work at the school level. So planning activities and planning new ways to work, but not only for one class, but almost for the whole school. So in linking with the idea about integration, exclusion, inclusion, is to allow everybody to feel recognized and to value them regardless their differences, because all of us, we are different in terms of religion, in terms of origin, in terms of gender. So it's a way to recognize the uniqueness that the teachers saw before and to value them. So I think this project has been very well valued for the teachers, and value as well for the head of the schools and for the student and for the parents as well. At the beginning, wasn't easy to catch them to be involved in the project because, as the Italian partner says, sometimes these kind of issues are quite controversial and the people try to avoid them. But once they are involved in the project, it's good for them to see the results and to see the benefit for the students and for the school community.
Okay. I see that there are some questions in the chat. If anybody can already, while we are having a talk like this, if you already have an answer to people, could you please respond? We will try and get to the questions. I still hope we have time for that. Margarita.
Well, I have to put in the conversation, not the pedagogical, but the political. Because from what we have seen is that we are trying very much in the pedagogical domain. We are trying to develop implementations and projects that they are pedagogically sound. But then we do all this work and we face the wall of the political. And I think that if we really, because I have seen with the teachers, we have been discussing and the parents, that we have been discussing the materials in Greece, that they feel that this is kind of eye-opening, and that they are confronted with their own stereotypical approaches and biases, and it's a good way to start talking. And it's the same with the kids in the classroom. But nothing will be done, or a lot less energy will be wasted if we do not address the political. And that's, I think an injection of activism is needed in education.
I agree. Judit, your views?
Yeah, I noticed that time is flying so fast, and I think that Peter's question in the chat is really very exciting about how to include boys. And I'd like to include an answer to that, because, you know, the interesting thing in Hungary is that approximately 90% of teachers are female. And the teachers who are male and still in the field, they tend to be the headmasters. Yeah, it's the kind of society we live in. And I think it's very important to see that when we're doing an educational project, the people we work with, their own lives are a kind of example for all the children. And it is very difficult for boys, so in Hungary, because mostly the teachers are female, it's very difficult to show for boys how to behave, because I mean, female teachers, I think, obviously show a female example of living in the world. So I think it's really interesting, and I would be so much interested in other countries where, in happier countries where they still have male teachers, whether they see a difference in this. I think it's a very important point that the personal experience of the teachers or the educators who do these projects is so relevant for the children.
Since the question came, just a moment. Since the question came from Peter, Peter is also a speaker at the conference, the final conference in a few weeks. So maybe, Peter, if you could comment on that, maybe that would be interesting for all.
Well, I think indeed it's a double bind because there are so many forces to keep stereotyping gender and to push, for example, the whole development of all over Europe to have more female teachers all the time and less male teachers. This has everything to do with the whole development, the lowering of status of teachers, and also to an extent it's good, because I think that what is happening. Why is the status of teachers being lowered? It's because education becomes more focused on pedagogy rather than just knowledge. And teachers were popular and high status because they were experts and they're like professors, and they were kind of top down teaching students, and students had to listen and sit still and be a slave of the system, to be proper slaves of industry later on. And this is slowly changing. This is slowly changing. It's becoming more democratic, a little bit more democratic. It becomes a little bit more pedagogic, more focused on the well-being of students, which are all good developments. But these are all kind of the feminine aspects that are kind of increased. It's a part of emancipation, but I think one of the big problems is that the status of these, what we call in a bad way, soft skills, that you know, even our language, that we have hard skills and soft skills, it's ridiculous. It's downgrades the most important skills that you have to learn. So I think that the answer in this is to look beyond gender, and also to look at raising the status of well, good upbringing, being nice to each other, living without conflict, cooperating together, having empathy, all these things that boys and men are not supposed to have or know or whatever. So I think I think the gender movement really suffers from a lack of, you know, it's like there is a glass wall, not only a glass ceiling, but also a glass wall to look beyond the traditional way of gender. Or even, and my speech, my introduction during the conference will focus also on this, that we should look beyond the seesaw, I call it, like the balance between the heteronormative vision of men and women fighting each other, and that kind of women have to be helped and men have to be nicer. I think we have to look a little bit beyond that, because it's also about more a general piece and general, what is it to be a good human being, and why do we attribute all these important skills? Why do we attribute such low status to them?
Thank you for your inputs, Peter. Well, as you said, time is flying, and we could talk about this all out. We have a short poll and quiz where we can all interact a bit. So, Luca, if you could start that would be nice.
Okay, so we have just prepared a little poll because we have participants from various countries, and we know that different countries and different educational systems have different levels of progress in terms of how much attention they focus on gender equality. And we know that the case is better in some places and worse in others. So we would like to know if you think that there is already enough attention and focus in your own context or school, or do you think there is more to be done? And it would be very interesting to hear from the panelists as well, that what are the main topics that you think need attention? Maybe you can just say very few concrete examples of what is that's already been not dealt with, but what is that's already mentioned at least, and what is that's completely out of sight for now, and what you need to bring into the discussion first in order to achieve something. I don't want to point out any panelists. If you have something to say, then or say a few examples, then just go ahead and unmute. Anyone?
Well, I guess.
Yes, I'm not sure if this is the right response, but what I hear from this, a lot of these materials being used allow for a lot more dialogue within the classroom. It's the softer approaches of people being able to discuss things and opening out understanding of this. And so to me, that is essential. And I think this, as Peter has said, goes beyond, if you like, the understanding of gender, and more appreciating the diversity of each of us and as human beings.
Thank you, Euan. Anyone else from the panel? Or if now the participants would like to say something from their own national context, you are welcome to do so. There are many countries represented among the participants that have not been represented in the panel, so we are curious to find out about your national context if you're willing to share it. We have a response from Ireland in the chat. Diana says that I work in a second level school in Ireland. Student choice of option subject is still following traditional gender stereotypes, unfortunately. We are trying many ways to improve this. As we know, the gender imbalance, and especially STEM education, is a huge problem. And what studies show is that very often it's originated in the stereotypes that are reinforced by parents, and their own bad STEM experiences are influencing the children and somewhat validating their choices. So Parents International has been working on some of projects where they have been working with parents as well, and the teachers to first recognize these stereotypes and then address also the students. Any other responses or inputs from the participants or the panelists? I see a hand raised. Fred, go ahead.
Yeah, that's me, Fred Verboom from ESHA. In the Netherlands, you see especially that if you look at technical focused education, and also like, for example, like ICT focused education, that the predominant majority of students are male. And if you look at education focused on healthcare, for example, if you look at the nursery level educations, that's almost 99% female people. So there's a lot of, I think that if you look at the choices of students, what they would like to learn, it's more or less based upon the role model that their parents are giving, but also perhaps something that should be done in education to make it very clear that women could be very, very good mechanics, because you can't hardly find any mechanic at all, any female mechanic at all in the Netherlands. And even before joining ESHA, I worked at Microsoft. And you look at the technical people within Microsoft, I guess we had one woman, the software developer. So there's a lot of things to be done.
Thank you, Fred. We have time for one more very short response. If anyone would like to give some input.
Can I say something?
Please.
And I would like to also react on what Fred was saying. I think that it's very important to mention, especially when we're talking about gender equality, that it mustn't be something forced. Because when Edwin was asking about our own context, very often policies and sometimes also practice is pushing people out of their gender roles. And the COVID situation very clearly showed that it's not a good approach if you're trying to push women to not be the carers. So I think that whenever we are talking about gender equality, we have to do it very, very carefully and understand if somebody by natural instinct, regardless of their birth gender, want to have a traditional role. And I think we have to support it just as much as breaking out of kind of gender silos.
Thank you, Eszter. Well, thank you everyone for participating in our webinar. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the whole webinar was recorded, so it's going to be available on the YouTube channel of the European School Heads Association. I would also like to thank the panelists, and I don't know, Edwin, if you would like to say a few closing words.
Yes, well, last thing I would like to do is, I'm sure that everybody already knows, but in a few weeks, on the 11th and 12th of February, we have the final conference, and I would like to invite everybody to be part of that. It will be shared with you. We'll send an email to you, to all people that have taken part in this seminar, as well as you can check on the website genderequalitymatters.eu, and you can register there. So from my part, I would like to thank everybody, all the panelists and people that have presented their cases. I would like to thank also the people that have taken the time to sit with us for 1.5 hours. We are looking forward to seeing you on the 11th and 12th of February in our virtual meeting from Dublin. So that's it from me. If anybody else still has something to add, feel free. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye and have a nice day.
Thank you.